Hi, my name is Catherine Engelbrecht. I'm with King Street Patriots and True the Vote. Thank you all, Senators, for the privilege of being able to speak with you this evening. I stand before you today to testify in support of Senate Bill 14. I'm president of King Street Patriots, and I said earlier, True the Vote, two nonprofit groups, both based out of Houston. King Street Patriots is a volunteer organization of concerned citizens, and True the Vote is a citizen-led initiative to protect the right to vote and the integrity of the election process. True the Vote volunteers work to educate citizens and train other citizen volunteers to be poll workers and poll watchers for their party, candidate, or issue. Now, the reason that that is important is because in the last election cycle, we put out trained volunteers, over 1,000 volunteers, and through the course of the election cycle, they turned back in over 700 what we call incident reports. Those incident reports categorically were indications of election laws being broken, but many of the abuses stemmed from the lax and ambiguous forms of identification currently accepted at our polls. These types of abuses would have been mitigated had we had benefit of legislation like SB 14. We witnessed numerous instances in which voters were in possession of more than one registration card. For example, a voter came in with a registration card and turned it over to the election judge, who looked at the poll book and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you've already voted." And he reached into his other pocket and said, "Oh, well, how about this card? That's a good card. You can vote that one." Another instance where a woman came in to vote and was told she had already voted. And she said, "Well, that's not the case. I haven't." And she looked at the poll book, and there was staring back at her a signature that she did not recognize. Without photo identification, there is no way to verify that a person is who they say they are, if they are that person on the registration card, or the utility bill, or the check. These examples are clearly violations of election code law, but there is no real-time recourse for a poll worker. Poll workers are obliged to allow these individuals to vote, to cast a regular ballot, because the system does not prevent it. Without photo identification, the evidence of impropriety is limited only to a signature comparison, which is typically considered insufficient to warrant any further review. And so when we often ask, well, where are the prosecutions? It's because more often than not, they end with the signature comparisons, and that's all we have. So as these scenes play out in polling places across our communities over and over again, election cycle after election cycle, the message communicated to both poll workers and to voters is the rules don't really matter. And if the rules don't really matter, then how do we know that our election results are right? We are on a very slippery slope, and the surest way to regain our footing is to restore common sense to our election code.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you so much.
Engelbrecht, Senator Williams, you have a question?
I just want to thank her for being here and for all the effort that her group put into the last election cycle. I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Catherine, thank you. Senator Williams said you did what so many people really wanted to have done, and that was to put eyes on the election. You trained poll workers. They stood there, poll watchers. They identified. They reported. You all stood up as citizens, fair and unbiased, and we appreciate your work and your effort. I met you just about a year ago, and you were just a citizen, just a mom who, with your husband owning your own business, had said, "I want to make a difference," and I appreciate you and all the work that those unheralded volunteers did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Hold on. You've got another question. Senator Van de Putte, did you have a question?
I sure did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for coming, and especially for waiting so long. But I wanted to understand, because I'm from Bexar County and not from Harris County, where we work. We love people to be involved. But on the reports that we had from, at least from the press, the group that you represent, the King Street Patriots, it was an article about voter intimidation. And so I wanted to ask you, were the districts, were the voting polling places that your group believed were having the numerous amount of fraud, where you were accused in several places of having voter intimidation mainly occur in minority districts that have been directed at Latinos and African Americans, as reported in the press?
That is all unequivocally incorrect. May I? I'll explain very quickly. When we started the early election, within just a few hours of the polls opening, we were informed that a press conference call had been called by the Texas Democrat Party, already charging that there were 14 counts of voter intimidation, with no backing whatsoever, where the press ran with that, and it was all over the place. The county attorney later said, and unfortunately that didn't make it out to the press, that there was, in fact, no voter intimidation. And our efforts were equally served over all 37 of the early election polling places. So we did not single out any community.
So this was at all, you had groups at all of the early voting places, or was it just in the places that had minority, mainly Latino or African Americans?
That's correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Van de Putte. Are there any other questions of the witness? All right, Ms. Engelbrecht, thank you for your testimony today.